Hey guys, welcome back to the Base Brief. This week we're talking about base politics going full-time, a new Trump defamation lawsuit, the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, and Brad and I are going to react to a Candace Owens hot take on gay people. Let's jump in. We've got a big episode this week, but we are officially on our second full-time day as Base Politics employees, and we are so excited, you guys. I hope you saw our announcements over the past week. We've been working so hard for this for so long, and actually, Brad and I were talking about this morning. We realized we've really never actually told you guys how a lot of this came to be, and so I thought it'd be maybe a little fun to unpack like how we actually got started, how we got where we are now, and where we plan to take this. So to kick us off, I'll just say one of the questions I get all the time, Brad, is like how you and I met. And we actually met on Twitter at the very beginning of the pandemic when you were the opinion editor at the Washington Examiner, and I started writing for you some. And I would say within a month or two of that, we brought Jack into our inner kind of dialogues. You and Jack had been talking about creating a news outlet right before me. And I got acquainted with Jack through you and through Jess Mears. I'd always been a fan of Jack's, but didn't know him before then. And then the three of us kind of started talking about what ultimately has become Base Politics. But even back then, you and I observed a few things. One, there are just not a lot of great jobs for content creators in the liberty movement. There's very few places for people like you and I to go work and get full-time employment and benefits and healthcare. And
it's not going to be in mainstream media.
Yeah, there's no positions for us in mainstream media. But even in libertarian think tank world, they don't always prioritize the kind of work we do. And I hate to say it, but a lot of groups that do, claim to do this kind of thing, they have a lot of bureaucracy and can often get in the way of the timeliness that's necessary to get this kind of work done, and even just the voice and the way things need to be said. So we had observed that, over two and a half years ago now, and had talked about creating something like this. And then you got hired at FEE full time. I ended up following you to FEE, and we were there for a while. But I think we've had this in the back of our minds for some time, because we've seen a lot of other young, talented people that we think should be doing this kind of work. And what ends up happening is there aren't jobs for them, and they end up getting hired to the right or to the left, and you watch them move, right? You watch their commentary start changing, you watch the issues they talk about change, and they tend to move pretty quickly away from libertarian, or at least even traditional conservatism views. And so we wanted to create an outlet that provided those kinds of jobs for content creators, because we know that media moves the culture. And I know from the amount of work I've done on the ground actually passing public policy that it is direly important that you have media on your side. It is very, very difficult to get issue advocacy done without some help, because we don't have the money to go in. We're not allowed to bribe the politicians like businesses are, right? We have to just go in with our ideas and try to convince them to do the right thing. And so we need the culture, we need the media, we need the grassroots pressure. And so for all of that, I think the liberty movement really needs a Base Politics that can come in and elevate the people doing good work on the ground, actually shine a spotlight on the people who are doing terrible things behind the scenes on the ground, and really start to move the culture on these issues, get people activated and excited about what's going on at the state and local level. And so we've already been doing that for the past couple of months. I think the proof is in the pudding, just from our nights and weekends that we've been pulling over the past 9 months to get this off the ground. We've already had responses from governors' offices. We've seen governors back off really terrible policies after we called them out on it. We've seen a lot happening at the local level in places like South Carolina and Virginia, where we have been really putting a spotlight on the activities of lawmakers there, and it's getting their attention. Why is Base Politics on our case? Why are they always covering us? They're not used to this kind of thing. So we think that Based has the potential to really move the needle as we progress at that level, and that's very exciting, because while we want to teach people how to think, not what to think, we also want to teach people what to do about it, right? I don't want people to feel helpless. I think there's a lot of ways you can make an impact and get wins in this system, and so I think that we can be a mouthpiece and help people kind of connect those dots. And then I'll let you kind of talk about the third piece, but I think what we're doing is really following the trends of media and influencer media.
So exactly, it's about the next generation of media and multimedia, because we do have some media in the liberty space, but it's more kind of traditional news magazine, news website style. And even that, we don't have a ton. But what we have very little of in both conservative media and liberty media is kind of next generation forward-thinking media. I mean, I've worked at publications in the past where they want their writers to be writing about what's being covered on cable news that day. And actually, if I said, well, what about what's on the front page of Reddit? They would look at me and say, what's Reddit? But the front page of Reddit gets, I don't know, tens, hundreds of millions of views. Cable news gets 1 or 2 million views an hour. So I think there's this enormous, a big part of base politics is our work on TikTok, Instagram, that's already reaching millions, as well as YouTube and podcasts and other multimedia platforms, because that's where we've got to go. If you want to reach Gen Z with the message, you have to focus on that. So that's a big part of our operation, because nobody's really doing that in our space. And the other side of it is kind of an influencer. It's a little bit of a cringeworthy name, but kind of that model, right? Where you have individual personalities with followings and spokespeople who, because nowadays people follow individuals and personalities a lot more than they follow brands. So base politics is the background hub, the organization, the nonprofit that makes our work possible, but we're going to bring people in. But for Brad Polumbo, for Hannah Cox, for our future contributors, and then it's kind of a mutually beneficial thing. You and I quickly realized that by sharing each other's work, we didn't lose followers, we gained. It's like a net gain from trade. Win-win. And in the same way, we're going to build this small network of influencers in this space, so to actually get those ideas out there to the next generation, because you're not going to do it by throwing money at publicists trying to get something covered on cable news or an op-ed published in a local newspaper. That's just not the way anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because one thing that grinds my gears is I see so much money getting wasted in the political apparatus. And it bothers me, because I'm somebody who really wants to get things done. I'm like, people's lives are on the line. Their livelihoods are on the line. I take it personally to see money wasted. And some of that I think is intentional, and then other parts of it are not intentional. It's just not really keeping up with the times. But I look at how much money our movement spends on traditional comms, which would be, spending a lot of effort hiring people in-house to write a couple op-eds a year, get them placed. And it's like, you're not moving the needle with this. This isn't how you do it. This isn't actually getting the masses in your corner. And we lose because we're not actually fighting this war where it needs to be fought. And you and I started observing that a while back on TikTok, where you go on and they're out in force on the left, right? They've already figured this out. They've got people there.
The commies are all over that platform.
They love it, and they're making an impact, right? They're preaching their views, they're talking to people in a common sense kind of way, and it moves the needle. It gets people rallied to their cause, and it actually does sort of educate people towards their way of thinking. We've got to be in those spaces fighting back, and it's not just the left that we have to fight back against these days. It's the right. You and I are very, very concerned with where the right is going. It has a lot of bad trends we see continuing to increase that are moving it away from free market capitalism, that are moving it away from a limited government worldview, and that are certainly moving it very quickly away from a concept of individual liberty. It's becoming very collectivist in some of its thinking and the populist strains. And so I think that we need to do a good job of pushing back on that. And I think also just educating people on how it's moving. Because I often hear people, when I say that, they're like, wait, how is it moving away from free market capitalism? Or how is it moving away from individual liberty or limited government? And I recognize not everybody has the time to pay attention to the day in, day out as we do. And not everybody has the time to actually go in and look at the policies they're preaching versus the language that they use, or to even recognize when they're using certain language, what it means, right? Like what it's signaling. And so I think that we need to do some real work in helping people understand, just basic things like how antitrust is not capitalist, how trying to get rid of Section 230 is not free speech. There's a lot of really bad policies being pushed right now, and I think a lot of people being taken very badly advantage of on the right. And so we think it's really important that we go in and set the record straight on some of that too. So that's where we're going. We're so excited. You guys have been incredible since we launched the podcast, since we announced Base Politics in full. We have had so much support, so many people joining our locals, so many people donating. Big donors, small donors, grassroots donors, it all means the world to us. We just really appreciate how people have gravitated towards our vision and want to get involved, and also just in sharing our work. We've had hundreds of thousands of people on the website, which is just mind-blowing.
Yesterday. No, that's not true, Hannah. We've had over 1 million.
Okay, we've had in 1 month.
Oh,
over a million.
No, sorry, over 1 million since we launched.
Oh yeah, easily. But in a month, like last month, I think we were like 340,000 page views. Yesterday alone, we had almost 50,000 page views when we announced. Our website actually crashed for a minute because of it. So we're going to be using some of our new donor money to try to increase some of that. But all of that to say, the outpouring has been significant. And I promise you guys, what you've seen so far has been with the pinky of mine and Brad's hands. We are about to really hit the ground running and stretch our legs and show you what we think we can do now that we get to focus on it full time. But we want to say thank you for your support. And if you want to keep helping, again, donate. It's a nonprofit. We want to be able to pay more people to contribute. We want to be able to increase our advertising, increase the production, increase the quality of the website. All of this, we need money to do. So if you have money and you want to donate, please get in touch with us. It means a lot. And if you don't have money, you want to support us, share our content. I can't tell you how far that goes. Continue sharing the content. Talk to people about base politics. Let them know that this is a new outlet they can tune into, and we hope that we can be a resource as we move forward. But yeah, it's officially October 3rd is Base Day moving forward. We dubbed it that, and that will be our anniversary. So
we're also competing though with the day that Mean Girls came out. So we have a way to go before we can usurp that as what October 3rd is known for.
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely Mean Girls Day. So we've got some tough competition there. All right. With that all being said, let's jump into the headlines. What do we have up first, Brad?
So we're going to talk about Donald J. Trump, everybody's favorite former president. And he is back in the news because he just slapped CNN with a massive defamation lawsuit. And this is interesting for a couple of reasons, but one is just the whole idea of defamation law is a very interesting topic. But he is suing CNN seeking damages. Here's some reporting from Newsweek. Donald Trump is seeking $475 million in damages from CNN, claiming this TV network smeared him with a series of ever more scandalous, false, and defamatory labels, including Russian lackey and insurrectionist. The case was filed with a federal court in Fort Lauderdale, southern Florida, around 40 miles from Trump's Mar-a-Lago private members club. So I'm going to, in a few minutes, we'll go through some quotes from the lawsuit to see exactly what he's breaking down. But I want to just explain to people that if you're a public figure and you sue someone, and if you're a private citizen, it's different. But if you're a public figure and you sue for defamation, you have almost no chance of winning. The standard is so high. You have to prove as a public figure what's called actual malice. Not just that something untrue was published about you, but that they knew it was untrue, or they just were completely reckless and disregarded the truth. So this is why you almost never see successful lawsuits against media companies, even when they do say something false. And you never see the lawsuits succeed when it's something that could be characterized as an opinion rather than a misstated fact. So we're not lawyers, malpractice alert, but Hannah, I would be willing to bet my house that this lawsuit does not go Trump's way.
I would say that, and I'd say it maybe even goes into the lane of being what I would call a slap lawsuit. Do you think that's fair?
I have no idea, honestly. I also don't know what Florida's slap laws are, but he sued media outlets many times before.
So this is something that, guys, if you ever want to get in the weeds on this is actually something I think is a huge deal. We have we've talked about this in the past. We have a very litigious society, which means it is really easy to sue people in the U.S. You basically have no grounds, and you're often not awarded damages if somebody wrongfully sues you. So it's an ability that you have in our system that clogs the system, that actually can be easily abused, where people can sue you without grounds, and you have to take on the expense of defending yourself and defeating the lawsuit, and then you often don't even get paid back for that expense or for the damage done to you by the lawsuit reputationally. So it's a really bad structure. I actually think slap lawsuits should be banned. I think that we need a federal statute to come in and regulate that, because it's done very often in our society, and these are lawsuits where basically the person, and I think this would fall under this grounds, knows they don't have a case, knows they don't really have the ability to win in court, but they're still going to sue for defamation and try basically to tie up the other business's time and money and resources, or individuals. And it's there's a really great John Oliver segment on this, actually. If you ever want to get in the weeds, I think he does a pretty good job in his segment discussing these kind of frivolous lawsuits.
So we have some quotes from the lawsuit that I want to read to you, because I find them amusing. Here we go. CNN's campaign of dissuasion in the form of libel and slander against the plaintiff, that's Trump, has only escalated in recent months as CNN fears the plaintiff will run for president in 2024. By comparing the plaintiff, Trump, to violent dictators and repeatedly using inflammatory language, such as Trump's big lie, CNN knowingly made false and defamatory statements about the plaintiff, or at the very least, made those statements with reckless disregard for their truth or falsity, thereby acting with actual malice. As part of its concerted effort to tilt the political balance to the left, CNN has tried to taint the plaintiff with a series of ever more scandalous, false, and defamatory labels of racist, Russian lackey, insurrectionist, and ultimately Hitler. These labels are neither hyperbolic nor opinion. They are repeatedly reported as true fact by allegedly reputable newscasters, blah, 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 blah. This caused him harm. Sorry, all of these things are opinion. They're literally, whether somebody is a racist is a characterization. Whether somebody is literally Hitler is a characterization, not a fact, right? Whether somebody is an insurrectionist is to some degree a characterization. What constitutes an insurrection? Was January 6th an insurrection? That's kind of, in the eye of the beholder, really. None of these things are, look, I don't agree with them. I'm not going to sit here and pretend CNN, I don't agree with all of them, that CNN has been fair to Donald Trump. Of course not. Of course they hate him. Of course they're biased. Of course they're trying to get him. All of that, though, is allowed. All of that is their opinion, their free speech, and he's suing to try to shut them up and make them pay up for it. And I think it's absurd.
Well, I think he's been no friend of the First Amendment or free speech throughout his tenure, and I'm really kind of ready for Republicans to wake up and recognize that. This man does not care about free speech at all, and I do think in that way he behaves a bit like a dictator or a tyrant. He really wants to be able to control the narrative around what people say about him, and there's nothing, this whole thing is baseless. I mean, even in a lot of what he's saying, CNN alleged, like saying that they continue to talk about his big lie. He did lie. He did lie. He continued to lie and scam his supporters for money, claiming the election was stolen, when he didn't even try to allege that in court because he knows it's false, and instead just took their money and continues to push that kind of crud to this day. He's, I think, a swindler, and I'm not surprised to see this out of him at all. But I think that it's important to take note of it because, again, free speech is really under attack in this country right now from both sides. It's a significant attack. We'll talk about this more in weeks to come, but two big cases actually just got taken up by the Supreme Court this week on Section 230, which could drastically change independent media, drastically change the internet as we know it. That's something Trump has also advocated for. And so this is one of my big issues with him. I have a few, but this is certainly at the top of the list where I don't respect this kind of behavior whatsoever. And, I know it's a political stunt more than anything else for him to be seen suing the mainstream media, fake news, blah, blah, blah. But it actually could have significant consequences if this were taken seriously. This is the last thing we want to see. This is how European courts operate, right? Where you can come in and sue people very easily. You see this with the royal family, and basically the press can't even print the truth about the royal family over there and some of their activities and things they do because they will basically be sued and shut down. And that's the last kind of society we should hope to see. I would rather see an outlet like CNN easily be able to smear the president, quote, quote, than to not be able to write the truth about him or their opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also have to say there's a degree of irony here. Repeatedly using inflammatory language. Who do we know that has repeatedly used inflammatory language? What about making false and derogatory statements? Well, yeah. Donald Trump has tweeted conspiracy theories about how Joe Scarborough murdered someone, even though that's been totally debunked. He has tweeted about Ted Cruz's dad being the Zodiac killer or something. Favorite.
And killing JFK. I don't know. I love this.
Trump has done so many wild, outlandish statements that if his own standards here were actually the standard, he would have been sued into oblivion for the things that he said about public figures. So I just find it funny. The whole lawsuit is a political stunt, but I can't wait to see it laughed out of court. But I do want to talk about this. I've never spoken publicly about this before because for a long time I was advised not to, but I think it's far enough in the rearview mirror now that I can. But I have actually been sued for defamation. I don't know if folks remember Roy Moore. He was a Republican Senate candidate running for the nomination in Alabama, who actually managed to lose a seat for the Senate in Alabama to a Democrat, Doug Jones, who served 2 years. This, I believe, was for Jeff Sessions' seat when he was made Attorney General. And Roy Moore was a really outlandish guy who had been kicked off the state Supreme Court, I believe, for different scandals. He'd said a bunch of terrible things about gay people. And then he was actually credibly accused by multiple underage females of inappropriate relationships and different things. And I wrote about this at the time in the context of him having said that being gay should be illegal. And I said, well, Mr. Morality, let's look at your own accusations here. And I framed it all as, this is what's been reported. This is what's been accused. And I don't believe any of it's been proven false. But like I explained earlier, even if it was false, that's not defamation. You have to prove I knew it was false, which I certainly did not, or that I operated with reckless disregard for the truth, which I never do. I always cite sources, check things out, make sure they're not conspiracy theories or anything like that. So he actually sued the Washington Examiner and me and several other people who worked there over my article and a few other articles about him as part of this big PR stunt after he lost to try to reclaim against the fake news media or whatever. And he has not been successful in multiple attempts at this. But I'm lucky I was, as an employee of the Examiner, indemnified. They covered my legal expenses with a lawyer and have handled the whole process. But it was kind of scary that somebody would come after you and try to shut down your press freedom over something you wrote about them that they don't like. It's really, that's all it was. I mean, there was nothing false, but even if there were, in my article, even if there was, that's not what defamation is. So I don't know whether it's technically a SLAPP lawsuit. That gets you into technical areas. Yeah. But it was a frivolous lawsuit, in my opinion, and it was repeatedly filed. When it wouldn't go his way, he'd just try again. That's essentially harassment. And if I didn't have a company or an organization, say I had been an independent journalist at that time, and he'd gone after me like that, what would I have done? How would I have paid for legal expenses? I don't know. And that's how they can wield these things to actually assault the freedom of the press and to shut down dissent. And that is something in a free society we should have absolutely no tolerance for.
Yeah, I agree. It's especially bad when it's a politician that's doing it, but it's never okay. And that would fall under the definition of a SLAPP lawsuit in most jurisdictions. And that's typically what they do, too. It'll get thrown out and then they'll refile it because the point is not to win. The point is to try to cause financial harm to somebody that they're angry with. We've also seen companies try to do this if they don't like... I've seen several times in Tennessee, there were companies who people left reviews of them on Yelp or on Google, and they tried to sue people for leaving their reviews of their companies. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's actually a huge issue, and it really is something that Congress should take up and fix. And I don't understand why there has been no action on it for so long. It seems like
because they think they're heavily lobbied by some legal interests. I don't know exactly why, but there's different attorneys associations or what are they called? I forget exactly, but there's different types of attorney organizations that work on these lawsuits that lobby heavily for certain the trial attorneys and other things that would probably heavily oppose something like that. And it's also the kind of thing that until it affects you is not going to be at the top of your mind as a voter. So that's probably why it doesn't get done.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So anyway, something to advocate on behalf of, though, if you're looking for ways that could actually make our society better. That's just a huge thing that's kind of under the radar for most people, but it's actually a really big problem. So, all right, on to other really, really big problems. In case you missed it, there was a massive hurricane over the past week that predominantly hit Florida, but has also affected other parts of the East Coast. From Reuters, they say at least 103 U.S. storm-related deaths have been confirmed since Ian made U.S. landfall, with catastrophic force as a Category 4 hurricane packing maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour. Geez. They say some 43,000 utility workers and support staff are working to restore power to more than 560,000 homes and businesses that remain without electricity on Monday. About 3.3 million Florida homes and businesses initially lost power during the storm, and countless others have been destroyed. They are still really working to kind of understand the full toll of this storm. They're still out looking for people who may have been victims of it. So first and foremost, I think both Brad and I just want to say our hearts go out to Florida, and for anybody else suffering from this catastrophe. I have lived through a natural disaster at one point in my life. It is a very scary, solemn experience. It takes a long time to rebuild. In 2010, when I lived in Nashville, this never made national news, which I still don't understand, but we had a massive flood in Nashville that actually completely took out downtown, took out yeah, it was crazy. I was at a Jimmy Buffett concert, and I was having a great time, and the mayor came out and stopped the concert and said, we're under a natural emergency. Everybody has to leave. This place will be underwater within 30 minutes. And it was just it was coming. Wow. If you've been to downtown Nashville, it was just coming up Broadway from the river that flows through up like this, up the hill. And yeah, within 30 minutes, the entire downtown was underwater, and a lot of people lost their homes. It took months, years to recover from that. So again, we just, all of our sympathies go out to those people, and thanks to first responders who are doing a great job. But Brad and I kind of want to cover some of the aftermath of the hurricane hitting, because it's gotten frankly weird. It's gotten weird.
It's also been, I just would add, it's been kind of grossly politicized in a way I really don't like. There's been two things. One, a bunch of people have tried to leap to make it like a Green New Deal climate change thing. Like, this terrible storm is because Republicans don't vote for the Green New Deal, that kind of thing, which is simplistic and foolish. You can argue that in the big picture, climate change contributes to storms, but that is actually, still something they're trying to understand. But even very, anti-climate change, very concerned scientific experts have explained you can't attribute any particular storm or the severity of any storm to climate change. You simply cannot make that connection. And then the other thing is just using it to try to take down Republican officials in the affected states, which I think is just gross. But yeah, we'll go into some specific things from the fallout, but it just saddens me kind of deeply that as a country, we can't respond to something like this more, just with our common humanity in mind, and kind of set aside our squabbling and our tribalism. It saddens me that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's really kind of bottom rung for our society. I think that a storm has been politicized, an actual storm is being politicized, and we'll get into that in just a second. But I agree with you. When everything hit Nashville, one thing that made me so proud to be a part of it, the community, was everybody band together. Like I said, we didn't get a lot of national attention when that happened. There weren't a ton of federal resources coming in. The community stepped up, and we're all helping one another, and it was just this really great time where we came together. And that's what you would hope to see, even just in sentiment, when something like this happens to anybody, right? Anybody. These are human lives, and there should be no rejoicing or gotcha or cheap political, pushes based on anything else. And it's just very disappointing to see. And I think that it does not bode well for us as a society if when something like this happens, we're just looking to score points or looking to undermine people. And Brad, you're right. I've seen several people who have talked about this as a climate change initiative issue. That's very ridiculous. But we've also seen them saying Republicans voted against hurricane relief in 2015, or some, random sort of bill they'll try to point to. And again, as we've taught you guys on the show over and over and over, oftentimes those bills either have other really bad things in them, or they're labeled hurricane relief, blah, 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 and they're a Trojan horse and have other stuff in it. So it's just really, I don't know, very uneducated, very bottom rung. I think it feels very cheap in my opinion. But
Kamala is always good for top rung, very educated commentary.
She's just a bastion of information. She's got to be one of the most articulate people to have ever come through political office. Just wonderful spokesperson. No, guys, I kid. This woman never makes any sense whatsoever. Let's roll her clip.
It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so
women.
Absolutely. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. And if we want people to be in an equal place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities and do that work.
I'm sorry, that's just absurd. What is she saying, that race and gender? Does she think the hurricane says, oh, I'm going to hit this black neighborhood over here. Oh, I'll pass by this white neighborhood. Like, what? And then the part about women is even crazier. Like, it definitely doesn't distinguish between women. You could argue, in a sense, that, low-income communities are more likely to be put in these high-risk areas. Maybe there's some truth to that. And then because there's a racial gap, maybe that would mean there's some racial angle. Like, you could stretch for some justification here. But on the women thing, this is just gobbledygook, woke buzzwords. And I get that that's the absolute state of the Democratic Party these days. But couldn't they just not do it on a literal natural disaster? Is that too much to ask?
I know she talks about the storm as if it's like the Passover, where like you mark your door and it passes over the white people and just goes and attacks the women and the people of color. Like, what? Yeah, it makes no sense. And also, I just find this to be like a tremendous slap in the face to all Americans who all pay taxes, who all fund disaster relief, and who all deserve a fair shake at it if and when they do suffer catastrophe. When you say equitable, I want to be very clear what she means, because everybody's been trying to clean up her mess from the statement from the White House and say that she didn't mean what she meant. No, she did. She knew what she was saying, and she meant it, and I know what she means. Equitable means that you want to treat people unfairly. It means you want to prioritize giving some people things over others. It means you want to take from some people and give to others. It is the opposite of equality, which is what we're supposed to have under the law, and certainly under the allocation of resources under the law. She is arguing for essentially what becomes collectivism, socialism, and communism, if you take it to the full extent of what she's advocating for here. It's disgusting. At all times, it's always a disgusting philosophy, but it is especially banal when you are talking about actual resources for people who have lost their homes, who are sometimes at threat of losing their lives, their livelihoods. Like, this is no time to be playing woke politics whatsoever. And I just find it incredibly offensive that you would indicate some Americans deserve help over others.
Yeah, and I will say we're not just attacking her because she's a Democrat, because I'd actually point out that President Biden has been a lot better on responding to the storm. Like, he has worked with DeSantis quite closely, who we're going to come to in a moment. But Biden has called DeSantis. Biden has been in communication with his team, approving his emergency declaration requests, coordinating with him. Like, the two of them have kind of set aside their ongoing rivalry, really, on partisan politics, and are working together. And then you have Kamala Harris. It kind of shows you, in my opinion, the two types of Democrats, really. The ones who are still somewhat normal, or at least remember what acting normal was like, and the ones whose brains have just, they're so open-minded and woke that their brain fell out. And I think Kamala's in that category. Maybe we can insert it here. I don't know if it's copyrighted, but they're the funniest thing. The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, of all places, is usually not very funny. They just published this montage slicing Kamala in with clips from Veep, where it's like a parody of a vice president. The woman in Veep is like supposed to be a bull in a china shop when she speaks.
Yeah.
And the clips are so similar. We'll see if we can put it in here, but if not, folks, go check it out. It's hilarious.
My fellow Americans, words have many meanings, and sometimes instead of conveying our meaning, they can suggest other meanings.
When we talk about the children of the community, they are children of the community.
Well, we are the United States of America because we are united. And we are states.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
Whatever we have in store cannot be known. The past was once the future. The future is, I should say, unknown.
We got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously.
Obesity is a serious disease, and it needs to be taken seriously.
You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
I hope that clarifies the issue, and this can be the last word on those words.
Certain issues are just settled.
Clearly we're not.
No, that's right. And that's why I do believe that we are living, sadly, in real unsettled times.
Well, okay, on top of the storm being apparently very racist, it also seems to have changed its pronouns. So storms usually are referred to in the feminine. They get she, her pronouns. That's always been the case. Recently, some people on the left have started advocating against that. Even before the hurricane hit, I saw a few weeks ago people saying that we needed to stop doing this, and I had responded to that and said, yes, having powerful storms referred to in the feminine definitely undermines my stance as a woman. Like, it's so ridiculous. But Vox actually, in one of their tweets about the storm, said, in just 2 days, Hurricane Ian's strength doubled. How did it intensify so fast? So it appears that the left is giving the hurricane they, them, it pronouns, and Twitter has been having a heyday with this, talking about that, and it's been pretty funny. So not a whole lot to say there, just a slight of hand that I'm picking up from the mainstream media, but it is a little bit amusing.
It is an interesting question of priorities. I've seen some stuff like, why do we call ships her? This is sexism. This is everyday embedded sex. And I'm like, it's not that deep, actually. It's really not that deep, and it's not affecting people in any negative way. To me, it's a sign, actually, of progress when this is the level of thing they have to get outraged about, or like even spend their time on in terms of, gender justice or whatever. It's like, clearly made a lot of progress if you're at the point where you're complaining about the pronouns of hurricanes and boats.
Yes, and also in all languages, if you've ever taken a secondary language, they have many irregularities in what's feminine and what's masculine. If you watch Emily in Paris, which I watched on my way to Paris actually, because I am a basic ass bitch, they basically talk about how the word for the vagina is masculine in French, and like that's a whole plot line. It's just meant to be kind of funny, but like this is true for many languages that you see this, and it's certainly not something that we need to be up in arms about. It contributes to gender justice. This hurts nobody. And the fact that it seems some people are actually concerned with the storm's pronouns while people are being killed by the storm just shows you the level of ridiculousness I think you find in many of these pockets. All right, so moving on, aside from these sort of ridiculous attacks from the left, we've actually seen a lot of people in the mainstream media going really hard at DeSantis. And I have to say, I've been a critic of many things DeSantis has done, including some of his things around content moderation and free speech and just mandates for private businesses during COVID in the state. I don't think he's always the most libertarian guy, but this is not where we should be criticizing him. It seems he's done a fantastic job, actually. It looks like Democrats and Republicans in the state are praising him for his response online. A lot of people saying they feel very supported and cared for, and I have seen no real missteps. He's working with the president as he should be, and just I think he's been a model governor that you would hope to see during a time like this. And so they have been really just grasping at straws here to try to find things to critique him over. But one of the more ridiculous things I saw them critique is that he didn't predict the storm's pathway better than the actual weathermen predicted it. And so I'll roll this clip real fast where he's asked about this.
Why do you stand behind Lee County's decision to not have that mandatory evacuation until the day before the storm?
Well, where was your industry station when the storm hit? Were you guys in Lee County? No, you were in Tampa. So that's, they were following the weather track, and they had to make decisions based on that. But, 72 hours, they weren't even in the cone. 48 hours, they were on the periphery. So you got to make the decisions the best you can. I will say, they delivered the message to people. They had shelters open. Everybody had adequate opportunity to at least get to a shelter within the county. But, a lot of the residents did not want to do that. I think probably for various reasons. Some people just don't want to leave their home, period. They're island people, whatever. But I think part of it was so much attention was paid to Tampa that I think a lot of them probably thought that they wouldn't get the worst of it. So, but they did. And I think it's easy to second guess them, but they were ready for the whole time and made that call when it was justifiable to do so.
Yeah, they've just been stretching. I've seen so many different media attacks on DeSantis, but he's handling it, I think, pretty well, pretty professionally. And what's really interesting is when they request comment from him for all these hit pieces, his office has been replying with the same kind of 2 sentences, which is just, now is not the time for pettiness or politics. This isn't, I'm paraphrasing. We're focused on our storm relief efforts and suggest you do the same. Right, when they say he voted against aid in 2000 whatever, and it's like, well, okay, but that was a big budget bill with lots of other things in it, and a whole controversy. Or they say he was wearing a vest with his campaign logo as he handed out aid, or it's like, okay, who cares? Like, he's coming off much better, I think, in terms of the political messaging. He has his whole political career in the last few years, he's framed himself as this like combative warrior for the right. But in this time of crisis, he's now framing himself, I think, successfully as a serious leader. And I just think this is playing out well for him. We're not down on the ground in Florida. We don't know every single detail. It seems like he's doing a decent job. And it really seems like these media attacks on him over the hurricane, like they're really trying to make it a Katrina moment, like for Bush. But it's not that, and they're falling flat.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clearly a political attack, right? They know he's probably their top opponent moving forward at the national stage, and like they are just really, really desperate here. Another thing I want to point to, so DeSantis made what I would say is a pretty based statement towards looters in the state. I want to roll this clip real fast.
The other thing that we're concerned about, particularly in those areas that were really hard hit, is, we want to make sure we're maintaining law and order. Don't even think about looting. Don't even think about taking advantage of people in this vulnerable situation. And so local law enforcement is involved in monitoring that. I told Kevin if the state needs to help as well, because you can have people bringing boats into some of these islands and trying to ransack people's homes. I can tell you, in the state of Florida, you never know what may be lurking behind somebody's home. And I would not want to chance that if I were you, given that we're a Second Amendment state.
So I love this. I mean, I'm very pro Second Amendment. I think people have every right to defend their person and their property from people who would do them harm. I think looting is disgusting. I'm fed up with the left not treating it like the violent, harmful crime it often is. And I think that that needs to be said. You often do see looting after these kinds of catastrophes, and that's awful to re-victimize people who've already been victimized in such circumstances. So I loved this defense. I loved that he was strong in this, and I totally back it. But he got called racist for it after this clip came out. Joy Reid, who's a bit of a Looney Tune, she said, she quote tweeted his statement and said, quote, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts, segregationist Miami Sheriff Walter E. Headley, 1967. Didn't take DeSantis long to return to form," and she linked this NPR article about how that original statement, that is totally unrelated, was racially inclined. To which I would say the only thing racist I see here is her assumption that all the looters would be black. Like, DeSantis never brought racism. He didn't say anything about race. Like, ma'am, you took it there. Like, and so I thought this was absurd.
Yeah, no, it's very dumb because she's like, the fact that a segregationist, racist person once expressed a sentiment does not mean that anyone who ever expresses that sentiment, irrespective of race, is therefore a segregationist. Or like, a racist person in the past may have said a thing that is not racist inherently, or was fine. Like, it's not like nobody's wrong about every single thing. I just think this is absurd. Property rights are human rights, and I can't imagine what it means, what it must feel like to have somebody in the aftermath of a life-threatening, turning people's lives upside down disaster, somebody comes in and tries to rob you and take advantage of your suffering. And I absolutely love what DeSantis is saying. Mess around and find out. Stay strapped. If you try to break into somebody's home and rob them while they're recovering from a hurricane and you're met with a firearm in response, that's no more than you deserve, to be honest. And I'm glad that in a state like Florida, they protect people's rights to stand up for themselves, rather than so many other states where they want to make it basically impossible for you to defend yourself. Because, even in the best of times, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. In the aftermath of a hurricane, who's going to be able to get to you to help you, right? No, you're going to have to defend yourself in many situations. So I think it's based. I love to see it from DeSantis, and the shrieking critics need to touch grass.
Yeah. All right, the last crazy criticism I saw is that DeSantis is basically working well with Biden and accepting federal relief. And so this tweet, oh man, this made me mad. Get ready for your blood to boil. This is from Politico. DeSantis has been a critic of Biden on nearly every policy front, but he sure does like the president's wallet. Over the past 2 years, DeSantis' admin received billions in federal relief cash, which the governor has used to fund his top priorities. This tweet knocked my breath out. I was like, the president's what? The president's what? His what? The president does not have a wallet that is our money? You freaking crazy people. Like, I went through the roof, came back, went through the roof again. I cannot stand this mentality. DeSantis, one, has every right to criticize the president all he wants. That doesn't mean that if you criticize the president, you don't get federal relief aid that we have all been forced to pay for when something bad happens to your state. Secondarily, it is not the president's money. Never has been, never will be. Like, what is that mentality? Oh my gosh. I had to log off.
The president's wallet. First off, it's the taxpayers' money, first of all. But secondly, even in terms of the government, it would really be Congress's wallet. They have the power of the purse constitutionally. I know Biden doesn't like that and has been trying to illegally circumvent it, but it's still not his money or his wallet. That was really astounding. And of course, they're like, well, he took federal relief money. I mean, what is he going to do? Say no? When they pass dumb policies at the federal level, spending money and giving these states bailouts, he's not going to just turn it down for his state. No, he's going to use it to fund things that he needs to fund. And therefore, he can give tax cuts or relief to people with the money that he doesn't have to use in his state for it. So I see nothing hypocritical about any of this. I just see more media desperation trying to take somebody down who they know is a political threat to the Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is exactly right.
Speaking of trying to take somebody down, Candace Owens, the right-wing firebrand, black conservative political commentator, recently came for the gays. She posted a big YouTube video where she finally gives her thoughts on homosexuality. And Hannah and I are going to react to this. Just going into it, Hannah, I have a feeling it's going to be a doozy.
I have a feeling that her thoughts are the average 80-year-old white boomer's thoughts because that's who she plays to. She basically is like, if you're in the market for somebody who just regurgitate what 80-year-old white men think, she's your girl. Like, she's got it covered. So here we go.
Candace's thoughts get off to a great start. Let's just listen to the introduction of her video.
Is homosexuality natural? Yeah, let's talk about homosexuality because it seems that a lot of conservatives shy away from that topic now.
So this is an interesting one because I actually don't think people shy away from this topic very much, but also, is homosexuality natural? We know where she's going with this. She thinks it's not. But also, like, this talking point has never made sense to me because natural doesn't equate to good. Vaccines are unnatural. They're artificially man-made and they save lives. But AIDS is natural. Hurricane Ian is natural. Like, the idea that something is natural, therefore is good, has never made much sense to me. And also, homosexuality is observed in nature in literally hundreds of species. So it's observed throughout human history, like going back to freaking classical era Rome, right? This is not setting us up well, Candace. You're not priming us to go into this and have a good time. You're starting to make me think that maybe this video isn't going to be the best.
I hate this trope on the right too, like the far right. It's not everybody on the right, but like this whole trope of like, no one has the guts to confront this very big culture war issue that they all spend all their time day and night thinking and talking and tweeting about. Like, I'm going to be the one to do it. It's like, honey, you literally only make money because you'll go say offensive things. Like, shocker, you're brave. You're going to say the offensive thing about gay people. Wow.
It's like you've already made your 50 videos about trans people for the month, so you're going to go back into this well. I mean, she sort of has a point that, like, the right doesn't talk about gay issues as much because most of the right is accepting now. Like, they have majority support of gay marriage, yeah. All right, so let's talk about this because she actually makes an interesting point a few minutes later in the video. Take a listen.
So a Gallup poll found that today 7.1% of adults in the United States identify as either lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, or something other than straight or heterosexual. Now, 7.1% today, but in 2012, 10 years ago, that number was 3.5%. So what changed? How did we more than double the amount of adults that identify as LGBTQ or something other than heterosexual since 2012? That just feels a little bit impossible to me.
Does it feel impossible, or could it maybe have something to do with, I don't know, gay marriage becoming legal, society becoming more open, not getting your head pushed into a toilet for being out?
Yeah,
maybe.
if you just look at polls between 2012 and now on gay marriage, on gay acceptance, on all these things, they've just skyrocketed. So that's a huge part of why. And it's like this idea that 7% is this massive social contagion. Well, like, estimates on this are really varied, but when you survey people anonymously, not on do you identify as gay, but have you experienced same-sex attraction, you'll get results anywhere from like 4% to 20%. And there's like a really long time, like 1 in 10 men is gay. It's kind of a, not fake, but like an archaic statistic, like just one of those things people say. It's not really a specific study found this, but like the idea that 7% would be abnormally high is detached from reality. If it starts getting really high, like for example, I actually think there's some merit to the point that like among Gen Z, it's becoming trendy. Like the numbers that say they're LGBTQ plus is so high, and they're starting to get clout for it. And so a lot of them will say they're bisexual, and then they're actually just not, right? But like generally speaking, the idea that 7% of people are saying they're LGBTQ, one, that includes more than just gay people. It includes transgender people. It also includes some new categories that are kind of silly and open-ended. So it's like that is not a surprising statistic or evidence of some like nefarious scheme. It's like about what you'd expect.
I like how she's like, 7%, I've never met one. How could they possibly be at 7%?
Well, actually, elsewhere in the video, we're not going to run the clip from this, but she talks about how she knows a gay person who is non-practicing and knows it's a sin, so he's gay but just doesn't have sex. And I'm like, that's a whole thing we could get into.
That's a whole deep issue thing, but I can't stand it. I hear that in religious communities a lot, and it's like, so your answer for people who are gay is that they should just be miserable and alone and never have sex? Like, ugh.
Great solution, guys.
Great. That sounds awesome.
But so the most controversial part of this that really went viral was when she talks about Ellen, who folks know as the very popular daytime TV host and lesbian who earlier in her career was actually fired for being lesbian, but then it kind of redounded to her benefit eventually as a huge part of her brand. Take a listen to what Candace had to say about Ellen probably being a fake lesbian who only likes women because she was molested.
And if you're a person and you're thinking, oh, maybe I'm lesbian, what an amazing lesbian icon to have to follow, right? Everybody likes Ellen DeGeneres. Everybody loved her show. I still enjoy snippets from Ellen DeGeneres' talk show, and she became one of the most popular hosts. Not mentioned, however, and I am not trying to draw conclusions for either of these women, but both of these women have also talked about the fact that they were sexually abused when they were younger. Before they found fame, they went through periods of sexual abuse. Is it related? It's understandable, I suppose. Of course, it's understandable that if you had been harmed by an individual of a certain sex, that you would shy away from all healthy sexual relations with that particular sex. But is that the right thing, right? Instead of acknowledging that these people have been harmed and trying to help them, we now have a society that just celebrates it. They just say, oh, this is completely normal. It's just this, everything that you're feeling is completely normal and it's completely valid. And buried beneath could be an individual that is hurt, that is still hurting, and that would make different decisions if people reached in and helped them. But we can't talk about that because that would be, I guess, gay conversion therapy, right? Which has all of these dark medieval tones, according to the internet, according to leftists.
One of the things I love about Candace Owens is when she thinks she's stumbled on some new thought, some new point. Like nobody's ever suggested that there could be a relationship between sexual assault and being LGBT before or growing up to be gay or lesbian. Wow, what a novel insight. Like, that has been a talking point for forever. And it's never really made much sense because there are tons of people who were molested as a child who grow up to not be gay. And there are tons of people like myself who grow up to be gay and were never sexually molested or abused in any way. And there's actually been a lot of research into this question. And you'll find studies on either side saying there's a slight correlation or there's not a correlation. So actually I decided to, it bothered me that Candace is making this point, but she's literally just talking about two anecdotes, Ellen DeGeneres and one other singer that she mentions earlier in the video. I looked up some studies for this, and I found one that entitled, "Does Maltreatment in Childhood Affect Sexual Orientation in Adulthood?" And this is from the National Library of Medicine. And it found that in instrumental variable models, history of sexual abuse predicted increased prevalence of same-sex attraction by 2%. And same-sex identity by 0.7%. So that would be a pretty small difference, but a difference, right? It would have some small impact potentially, but what's really interesting is that they explain in the study that you can't actually make this a causal assumption. You can't assume that they're more likely to be gay because they were abused. It may actually be they were more likely to be targeted for abuse because they were displaying signs of being different or experiencing social isolation that made them more vulnerable to a predator. You know, like the gay kid 20 years ago, obviously was probably socially isolated, which would mean he would be a target for an abuser potentially. So it's really not a narrative that checks out. It also is just logically inconsistent because the logic from these folks is that a woman who is molested grows up to become a lesbian, but a boy who is molested by a man grows up to be gay. That's what they're saying. That doesn't make any sense. And the data don't bear it out in any significant way. So the whole thing, she just gives me headaches.
I can't stand Candace, never have been able to stomach her, and I don't know how this constitutes for any kind of like actual journalism or commentary. It's literally just her popping off her opinion that's not that well informed and not really backed by anything else, per usual in my experience with her content. So I'm not surprised by any of this, but I think, like, again, it just, at this point, you just have to laugh. She's like, we're not allowed to talk about this. Nobody can talk about this. It's like, man, there's hundreds of studies. Like, people have been talking about this forever and ever and ever. Like,
yeah,
I just don't get, like, why she thinks she's a shock jock. Like, it's so funny to me that she, like, has this, like, opinion of herself. She thinks she
stumbled on new terrain here. She's like, I had this thought thinking about Ellen that no one else has ever thought before. And it's like, ma'am, maybe if you just read up a little on a subject before. I think, like, even her podcast title for this week is My Thoughts on Homosexuality. And in this whole video, she refers to the homosexuals. And it's just like, it's all so melodramatic. And it's just like, I think this is what happens when you build a brand purely based on outrage attention. It's the same reason she just rolled up with Kanye in White Lives Matter hoodies to an event. It's like, they just have to, when you're addicted to any press, any spotlight, any attention, you just have to keep getting more and more outrageous and stooping lower and lower to get that fix, or because, God forbid, people don't pay attention to you. And that's the vibes I get here, honestly, is she just thinks like, what can I possibly talk about today that I can be controversial? Because, God forbid, I don't get, 1 million views or something, or Media Matters doesn't write about me today. Like, they just don't, she doesn't approach these issues with a semblance of good faith or even integrity or seriousness. So whatever, Candace, do better next time. But I guess that's our little check-in on our friends over at the Daily Wire for this week.
Culture war check-in.
Yeah, they're just really going back to, like, they want to go back to the 1980s or whatever. And it's just, that's not where people are. Even her fan base. Some of the boomers, yeah, but like a lot of them, just no. Just get over it. Build a bridge. Cope and seethe. Like, gay people are just fine. You're just going to have to deal with it.
You're going to have to learn to live with it. Well, speaking of a culture war issue that I actually do care about, this is my hot take this week. And it's about the pumpkin spice culture war. And I just want to say, let white women have our pumpkin spice, okay? I'm so tired of people just bullying us. Like,
White lives matter.
White pumpkin spice lives matter. Like, I don't understand, and you actually see it from other women as well, this need to just, like, hate on women for things that they like. And it's not just pumpkin spice, but I think pumpkin spice is kind of the epitome, and then you also see it, like, girls taking photos with Insta traps, or, like, girls liking Taylor Swift. It's like, why can girls liking Twilight? Why can we not just like the things we like without being bullied over them? Like, why does it make you upset that I get joy out of pumpkin spice? I want you to know, I went to Trader Joe's this week, and you better move fast, guys, if you're a pumpkin spicer, because they have about 1 week a year where everything becomes pumpkin spice flavor. They have tons of baked goods that are gluten-free pumpkin spice, but if you don't act fast, it'll be gone, and they will not restock. You'll never see them again. So I bought like 5 boxes of pumpkin spice coffee. I bought pumpkin spice muffins, pumpkin spice bread. I'm having a great time over here, and I just wish people would let go of the hate in their heart and give pumpkin spice a chance.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think it might also be a gay thing. My boyfriend came home with pumpkin spice pretzels from Trader Joe's. They'll just put anything on pumpkin spice. I guess this is the one thing that, like, the only time I ever feel at all anti-capitalist is when things I despise become, like, robustly popular, and I'm like, the market is failing. But I think that that's just the point, that people's preferences aren't my preferences, and the market's meeting the demand. I just think the demand is wrong. But pumpkin spice is fine. I have nothing against pumpkin. I really love pumpkin pie. I will say that.
Yeah, pumpkin pie is great. The
so
OG pumpkin spice.
Yes, my hot take is that nobody makes good pancakes anymore. One of the things I used to do in DC a lot was go out for breakfast or brunch. And now around here, I've been to a lot of what you call like hipster bougie breakfast places that will have really great meals. You'll get like a vegetable hash scramble, or you'll get like an eggs Benedict, or all these like, and they're really good. But if you simply order their pancakes, they taste like soggy water loaves. Like, they're just not good. And I'm like, this is why I go to IHOP, and I don't feel bad about going to IHOP. I like IHOP. I think there's something to be said for quantity over quality in food. And I also think there's something to be said for like lowbrow food places that consistently at least give you what you want, rather than trying to make pancake. Like, they try to make pancakes. They're like, oh, this is our flaxseed of pancake with fresh raspberries. Or like, they try to make it bougie. And it's like, no. Make me a fluffy chocolate chip pancake, throw a slab of butter on there, and give me some syrup. And that will actually be good. But so many places, they think that they need to make everything hipster and bougie, and they ruin perfectly good, simple foods in the process.
I think that's true. I'm a waffle eater over a pancake, but I will stand by Waffle House all day long. I think Waffle House is amazing. And
I don't think I've ever been to a Waffle House because it's regional. There's none. Yeah. There are none in New England where I grew up.
There's none where you live now. It's like Mason-Dixon line and below.
And I don't really go to the South very much.
I know. Well, if you come visit me, I will take you to Waffle House. It's great. But until then, I think IHOP will suffice. So I'm glad you at least have that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That's a wrap. I'll see you next week in Miami if you're heading to LibertyCon. And other than that, stay based until next time.